Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous has just launched and has a very complex character creator, 25 classes plus more subclasses, 12 races, heritage, backgrounds, ability score, skills, feats, spells, deities, alignment, and then you get to decide how your character actually looks. Today I'm going to guide you through the character creation process for Pathfinder and put you on the right path. Get it? Right path? This video is sponsored by my Twitter account. I'm trying to be more active on other platforms like Twitter and Instagram, so if you are interested in that, please go over there and give me a follow. Now let's go. Now, as always with my videos, you can check the chapters in the video description if you're looking for a specific section of the character creator that you need help with. That will be your guide there. And we're going to start off with classes and go through the character creator logically as it is presented in the game. So classes, there's 25 of them plus all of the subclasses in this game. There is a ton of choice. Even for me who loves this kind of stuff, it is really hard to choose what class you're going to pick. Normally here in one of these videos, I would go through each of the classes and give you a rough starting guide of how you should play them, but honestly there's 25 of them plus the subclasses. It is too much to go through. Thankfully, the Pathfinder devs OurCat have pretty much thought the same thing, and there is a button that you can click for a recommended build for every single class. When you click this recommended build, it will give you a rough idea of how you should actually build out a character for that specific class. Now, when you do have this button selected, what it means is that it will give you a auto leveling experience, so it will level you up automatically. What you can, however, do is once you have clicked this button, you can deselect it, and it will also keep the ability score and some of the other options selected. It'll just gray them out. So then when you do actually get to these options later in the line, you'll have a rough idea of what the game thinks you should put in there, and then you can use that information to decide if you should select off it. Say for example here, when we're selecting recommended build, then you select, you can see the ability score changes. You can notice that this will happen for all of the other options. The other three things you should look at is the difficulty, the special effects, and this little pre-made diagram. The pre-made diagram and the difficulty is more just information that is important to know. The pre-made diagram will tell you kind of what that class is good at or bad at, especially if you go the recommended build. And then the difficulty is how complex that class is. Now, this really doesn't matter too much. Like if you really like a character that's listed as super difficult and you've never played a Pathfinder game before, it's not going to matter drastically. There's just a little bit more of an extra learning curve to say a class that is just a fighter that's going to smack things with a hammer compared to a class like the Inquisitor where you've got magic and melee elements or even ranged elements to it. It just is a little bit more complex. It's just a bit of a warning in that. The special effects is the important one. This is where you'll really get a really good feel of how that character is going to play. You know, something like the Cavalier has an animal companion for all of its subclasses. Some of the other subclasses have things like an animal companion or other different benefits depending on how they are compared to the base class, if that makes sense. So there's plenty to have a look at here and just have a read, decide what you like. I don't want to put you into any specific direction because there's just too much information here. Some fun options, the Cavalier, as I mentioned, you get a cool animal companion that you can ride around and do tons of damage with in combat and also speed around the battlefield because they're much faster than you. The Inquisitor and the Mages are pretty unique and can wield arms and spells together in combat, so they're really fun to play around with. But there's plenty of options here. There's a typical, Dungeons and Dragons character classes if you're used to that rule set compared to Pathfinder. Plenty of options here. Now let's move on to race. Now when you're picking a race, if you're trying to min-max, you want to pick a race that benefits the ability score for your primary stat, and you can check that via the recommended build, or you could even skip ahead to the ability score section and see which options have a little green tick next to them. Now when you do pick a race, this will give you other benefits as well, being something like your racial heritage or your background or other little features involved in that as well. Now there is obviously a roleplay element when you pick a race. However, the role-playing aspect of the race isn't as pronounced as some of the other games out there. Not all the characters you meet in this game are going to be racist and hate certain races like in a lot of other games and how important that decision is. So you can basically pick here depending on what you like the look of and what class you are going. Next, we have racial and heritage and background. We'll combine these two. The heritage is a trait in Pathfinder. Traits can give your character various bonuses or allow you to perform other kind of actions. For the most part, they're passive depending on the race that you have chosen, and they are dependent on the race you pick. Something like a half-elf would have the adaptability, which gives you a skill focus as a bonus feat, but only if you are a half-elf. The other races will have different heritage. I would suggest to pick something that's giving you benefits to saving throws or to an ability score if it is for the the specific ability score you're focusing on. Otherwise, pick something that is giving you bonuses for saving throws, as it can never set you wrong. Background is very similar, except it's more focused on the roleplay aspects, and you can get various bonuses from these, but it's really the background of your character, you know, where they came from, that kind of thing. It's a bit roleplay specific, but they will give you some various bonuses as well. Now, the big one that we have next is ability score. Depending on the class you pick, the stats you should focus on will be different, and the ones you can tell which ones you should focus on for your class will have a big green tick next to them. This is a good indicator of the ability score that should be the highest. These 2 or 3 values should always be the highest, and we'll go through them all one by one. Now, strength. Strength measures the muscle and physical power of your character. Bards, paladins, blood rages, oracles, skulls, and sorcerers all gain benefits from this stat, and they should be one of your key focuses. For the dexterity measures agility, reflexes, and balance, and this is for your rogues, your slayers, your hunters, your monks, and your rangers. Constitution, however, isn't the primary focus for any of the classes, although if you are making a tank, it is very important. It represents your character's health and stamina, and it's important for every class, although there are some creatures that don't have a constitution stat, like an undead or a construct. However, everyone else should at least have 10 in constitution, regardless of the class you're picking, because it is really important to be able to survive in combat. You know, you need to have some health about you. Intelligence determines how well your character learns and reasons with other people. This is important for alchemists, arcanists, witches, magi, and wizards. And wisdom. Wisdom describes a character's willpower, their common sense, awareness, and intuition. This is important for your clerics, your druids, your inquisitors, your war priests, hunters, shamans, and rangers. And charisma is our lucky last ability score. Now, charisma measures a character's personality, personal magnetism, ability to lead, and your appearance to others. You know, how good you are in those conversations. Bards, paladins, blood rages, oracles, skulls, and sorcerers should all be focusing on your charisma. Depending on the class you picked, you might get some extra benefits here to choose which one of your ability scores you want to buff based on your race choice. Choose whichever one is relevant to your class, and we'll move on to skills. Skills represent your character's ability to accomplish tasks past the in-game checks, know things about, you know, the environment or law, religion, jump over certain obstacles with your athletics, and just generally engage with the world around you. Skills are dependent on your ability score modifiers. For example, athletics uses your strength, plus then you can get bonuses for putting points into your athletics skill line. You should be choosing something that is beneficial to whatever your highest ability score is. Say, for example, if you are a strength-based melee character, you want to put your points into athletics, so then you get the most benefits out of this skill. You won't be able to be proficient in every single skill, so you will have party members that can fill in the gaps for you. However, focusing on the skills that you will get the most bonuses from are the ones that you should focus on here. Next up, we have feats, and it's not those kind of feats. And what feats are in Pathfinder is a different special capability or ability that allows your character to do certain things in combat or outside of combat. There is a lot of choice here, and it is definitely overwhelming, especially when you don't really understand how your character plays yet. What I would suggest to do, other than if you are going to pick the recommended build option, obviously do that. That won't lead you astray. Otherwise, you can click the little filter option and choose something under here, whether it's attack, defense, melee, range, etc., etc. Choose a category and then pick from that shortened list. This is really beneficial if, you know, you're making a ranged ranger, for example. You know you're going to be using bows. You want to choose that option underneath the ranged option and pick something under that category, so you know that you're getting something valuable for your character, where there's plenty of other things that may not be beneficial for your character. Your next tabs will be different depending on the class you choose. You could have animal companions, you could have spells, or you could have neither. The animal companion is gained via classes like the cavalier or some of the other subclasses. You will also gain an animal companion. These will follow you around and fight with you in combat. They're basically like a extra party member or follower that doesn't really have any dialogue options, but they just follow you around and attack as a unit in combat. If you do mount them, you will get extra movement speed and attack as a unit together, so you'll do a little bit of extra damage. They're really cool to have. You know, I played around with them a little bit in the beta. I haven't chosen one for my main character for the main game, but they are fun little toys to play around with. And your spells. Now, I'm assuming you know what spells are, as they're pretty common across all these kind of games. The challenge with spells is knowing what to pick, and this is, again, where the recommended build comes in handy. I would honestly just choose whatever it tells you to choose and really just move on. In my experience, unless you're playing in turn-based mode 100% of the time, the spells are less important in this CRPG compared to some of the other ones, because you're not micromanaging your characters as much as you would in something like the full turn-based mode, like, you know, Baldur's Gate or something something like that. But if you're going to play turn-based mode consistently all of the time, then if you're doing that, you probably know what spells you want to pick anyway, and then you can move on from there. Whew. Let's just chill out for a minute and take a break. That's a lot of information that I've just thrown at you. Now, there is other class-specific options. Like if you go Cleric, for example, there are various other things that will happen for things like Channel Energy or Domain, for example, for a Cleric. Now, these are class-specific, and there's a few of them out there that are very class-specific. Now, I'm not going to cover these too much, but really, you could just pick the recommended option. Most of them will give you a decent explanation of what they're for, and in a lot of cases, because they're extremely class specific, they're not going to matter too much unless you are choosing something very specific for your class build, which if you do know what you're going to do in that case, it's not going to matter for you. Now, the last couple of options is the Deity and the Alignment. Deity and Alignment really go hand in hand because certain deities will lock you out of having certain alignments. If you pick an evil deity, you can't be, a lawful good character, for example. Alignment represents a character's basic morals and ethical attitude. Alignment has two components, and one of them is the lawful, neutral, or chaotic. Following and other than that, you get good, neutral, and evil. Throughout the game, you will be given different dialogue options based on these different elements. It could be a good option, could be an evil, could be chaotic, could be neutral, could be lawful, and really you are choosing how your character is going to roleplay throughout the game. So I would honestly be trying to pick an alignment first and then pick a deity that suits it, even though the deity is the option that comes first. So that's really how you want to decide to play your character. You could be good, you could be bad, or something in the middle. And then you move on to the appearance section, and that is where you no longer need me. You can decide how your cool new hero will look. I'll leave you with two final pieces of advice, and the first is don't multi-class when leveling unless you know the Pathfinder rule set very well and understand how the classes work. It will lock you out of some of the top level upgrades, so when you hit level 20, you won't be able to get some of those maximum upgrades because you've spent your levels leveling up other classes, if that makes sense. The last piece of advice is to hit that big red subscribe button. Gotcha. In all seriousness, I'm working on more content for this game. I'm going to have a tips video coming out very soon on the channel, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch if you like more of the stuff that I do. Thank you for watching. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.